The desperate signal, the Kepler system had known peace for 3,000 years. Along the outer rim of the galaxy, far from the turbulent core worlds, the system served as a quiet trading hub where dozens of species came to exchange goods, knowledge, and culture. At the heart of this peaceful commerce stood Station Harmony, a massive structure built by the Vellner, people who called this system home. Station Master Corin stood in the central observation deck, his forearms moving gracefully as he reviewed the day's trading manifests. The Vellner were a gentle species, their bodies covered in soft silver fur, with large intelligent eyes that reflected their curious and peaceful nature. They had evolved on a world with minimal predators and abundant resources, developing a society built entirely on cooperation and mutual benefit. War was something they had only read about in the histories of other species, a concept so foreign to their nature that they could barely comprehend it. The station hummed with activity as ships from across the sector docked and departed. Corin's assistant, a young Vellner named Cyril, approached with a concerned expression. Her fur rippled with the patterns that indicated uncertainty among their kind. Station Master, we are detecting unusual readings from the outer system. Multiple contacts moving in formation toward the inner planets. Corin turned his attention to the scanner display. His primary eyes widened as he studied the approaching signals. Send a greeting message on all standard frequencies. Perhaps they are a new species seeking to establish trade relations. Cyril's fur patterns shifted to alarm. Station Master, the computer is identifying their energy signatures. These match records from the Galactic Archive. These are Krethix vessels. The name sent a wave of fear through Corin's body. The Krethix were known throughout the galaxy as the Swarm, a parasitic species that consumed entire civilizations. They traveled in massive hive ships, overwhelming peaceful worlds and harvesting everything of value before moving on to their next target. They had destroyed 17 known civilizations in the past century, and the Galactic Council seemed powerless to stop them. Sound the evacuation alert immediately. Contact the Council and request emergency assistance. Corin's voice remained steady despite his fear. He had trained for emergencies, though nothing could have prepared him for this moment. Within minutes, chaos erupted throughout Station Harmony. Thousands of civilians rushed toward evacuation ships, while Vellner security forces, equipped only with basic crowd control equipment, tried to maintain order. The Vellner had no weapons of war, no military fleet, no concept of how to fight against such an overwhelming force. The Krethix ships, materialized from slip space like nightmares made real. Dozens of organic-looking vessels, their hulls appearing more grown than built, surrounded the station. Without warning or communication, they opened fire. Energy weapons tore through the station's civilian-grade shields as if they were paper. Entire sections decompressed in seconds, taking hundreds of lives in an instant. Corin stood at his post, refusing to abandon his duty even as the station shook around him. He transmitted a final desperate message, broadcasting it on every frequency known to the Galactic Archive. This is Station Harmony in the Kepler system. We are under attack by Krethix forces. Our defenses are inadequate. Civilian casualties mounting. We need immediate military assistance. To any species capable of responding, please help us. His voice cracked with emotion. We are a peaceful people. We have no way to fight them. The message scattered across the void of space, traveling through relay stations and communication networks. Most species who received it turned away, knowing the Krethix were too dangerous to confront. The Galactic Council began their standard procedures, which would take weeks of debate before any action could be authorized. For the Vellner, such delays meant extinction. But one species heard the call and responded differently. Deep in human space, at Earth Defense Command headquarters on the Moon, the message reached Commander Sarachon as she reviewed fleet readiness reports. At 42 years old, Chun had spent 2 decades in the Earth Space Navy, rising through the ranks during humanity's expansion into the stars. Her sharp features and intense brown eyes reflected a lifetime of hard decisions and harder battles. "Play that message again," she ordered, her voice cutting through the command center's ambient noise. The Vellner distress call echoed through the room. Chun's expression hardened as she listened to the fear and desperation in Corinne's voice. "How long ago was this transmitted?" "7 hours, Commander," replied Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her tactical officer. "The message traveled through 3 relay stations before reaching our network. We are detecting follow-up reports from automated systems in the Kepler sector. Multiple Vellner colonies are under assault. Estimated casualties already exceed 2 million. Chun stood and moved to the strategic display showing the galactic map. The Kepler system lay 3 days away at maximum slip space velocity. 7 hours meant the Krethiks had already inflicted devastating damage. Has the Galactic Council responded? They have issued a statement of concern and are forming a committee to study the situation, Webb said with barely concealed disgust. Standard procedure could take 2 to 3 weeks before any military action is authorized. 2 to 3 weeks. Chun repeated, her voice cold. There won't be any Vellner left to save in 2 to 3 weeks. She made her decision in an instant, the kind of rapid choice that had made her both respected and controversial among Earth's military leadership. Contact Admiral Morrison. Tell him I am requesting authorization to deploy the Third Fleet for immediate humanitarian intervention. Within the hour. Chun stood in the holographic conference room, facing Admiral James Morrison and the Earth Defense Council. The council members appeared as life-sized projections from various locations across human space. Morrison, a grizzled veteran with cybernetic replacements from a combat injury, studied Chun with his remaining natural eye. "Commander Chun, you are proposing we take the Third Fleet into a conflict that does not directly involve human interests. The Council is concerned about the implications." Counselor Park, a diplomatic specialist, spoke carefully. "We have worked hard to establish our reputation as reliable but cautious newcomers to galactic society." Chun's jaw tightened. "With respect, Counselor, the Vellner have been trading partners with human colonies for 15 years. They provided us with advanced agricultural techniques that helped terraform 3 of our outer worlds. Beyond that, this is about establishing what humanity stands for in this galaxy. And what do we stand for, Commander?" Morrison asked, though his tone suggested he already knew her answer. "We stand for protecting those who cannot protect themselves. We stand against predators who prey on the weak. The Krethiks have destroyed 17 civilizations because no one had the courage to stop them." Chun leaned forward, her intensity filling the holographic space. "The Vellner are peaceful traders. They have no weapons, no military, no concept of how to fight. That makes them targets. But it does not make them worthless." The council members exchanged glances. Finally, Counselor Rodriguez spoke. "Commander, you should know that humans have developed a certain reputation among galactic species. They call us Deathworlders. Do you know why? Because Earth tried to kill us every day for millions of years," Chun replied without hesitation. "High gravity, lethal radiation, extreme weather, predators at every turn, diseases that would wipe out other species. We evolved to survive in conditions that most aliens consider uninhabitable. It made us tough, adaptable, and very good at fighting when necessary." Morrison nodded slowly. "The Krethiks have never faced a species like us. They have built their entire strategy around overwhelming peaceful civilizations. What happens when they encounter predators instead of prey? They learn what humans learned long ago," Chun said. "That sometimes the only way to stop a predator is to be a bigger predator." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Admiral, every day we delay, thousands of Vellner die. They sent out a distress call. They asked for help. If we ignore that call, what does that say about humanity? Morrison was silent for a long moment. Then a slight smile crossed his scarred face. Commander Chun, you are authorized to take the Third Fleet to the Kepler system. Your mission is to engage and neutralize the Krethix threat by any means necessary. Show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens Earth's friends. 2 hours later, Chun stood on the bridge of the EDF Retribution, the flagship of the Third Fleet. Around her, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for immediate departure. The fleet consisted of 20 warships, each designed to operate in conditions that would crush vessels from most other species. Human ships were built heavy, with redundant systems, reinforced hulls, and weapons that could function in environments ranging from the crushing depths of gas giants to the radiation-soaked space near active stars. Lieutenant Webb approached with the final status report. All ships ready for departure, Commander. Crews are at battle stations. Slip space drives are charged and ready. Chun took her command chair, her eyes scanning the tactical displays showing her fleet in perfect formation. Open a channel to all ships. She waited for the communication officer's nod before speaking. This is Commander Chun to all Third Fleet vessels. We are about to undertake a mission that will define how the galaxy sees humanity. The Velner people are under attack by an enemy that believes peace makes you weak. We are going to show the Krethix and everyone else watching that protecting the innocent is not weakness. It is strength. She paused, her voice growing harder. The Krethix have never fought Deathworlders before. They do not know what humans are capable of when we decide to fight. Today, they learn. Today, we show them that Earth does not abandon its friends. Fleet, prepare for slip space insertion. Set course for the Kepler system. Maximum velocity. The massive engines of the human warships flared with blue-white energy as the fleet accelerated. One by one, the ships tore open holes in space-time and vanished into the swirling corridors of slip space. Behind them, Earth's moon gleamed in the darkness, a reminder of where humanity had come from and how far they had traveled. Inside the Retribution's slip space bubble, the journey would take 3 days. 3 days while the Velner fought desperately. For survival against an enemy they had no hope of defeating. 3 days before the Krethix learned that their latest prey had friends. Friends who had evolved on a world that made the Krethix home seem like paradise in comparison. Chun sat in her command chair, reviewing tactical data and preparing her battle plans. The Krethix used overwhelming numbers and organic technology that adapted quickly to enemy weapons. But they had never faced an enemy that could match their ferocity while exceeding their tactical sophistication. They had never faced humans who had learned warfare in Earth's harshest environments, who had spent millennia perfecting the art of survival against impossible odds. The countdown timer showed 72 hours until arrival. Chun smiled without humor. The Krethix had 3 days left to enjoy their superiority. After that, they would learn why most species feared Deathworlders, and why that fear was entirely justified. Asterisk, the reckoning the Third Fleet dropped out of slip space at the edge of the Kepler system like ghosts materializing from the void. Commander Sarah Chun stood motionless on the bridge of the Retribution, her eyes fixed on the main view screen as the tactical sensors began painting a picture of devastation that made her blood run cold. The display revealed horror before them. The once vibrant Kepler system had become a graveyard. Debris fields marked where Velner stations and ships had been torn apart. The blue-green worlds that had hosted billions of peaceful beings now showed scars of orbital bombardment across their surfaces. Sections of continents glowed with the heat of weapon strikes. In the center of this destruction, 43 Krethix hive ships moved in coordinated patterns, continuing their systematic harvest of everything the Velner had built over thousands of years. Lieutenant Webb worked frantically at his tactical station, his face pale as the numbers came in. "Commander, we are reading massive civilian casualties across 4 planets. The Krethiks have deployed harvester drones to the surfaces. They are collecting biological matter and resources." His voice caught slightly. "The drones do not distinguish between living and dead targets." Chan's hands gripped the arms of her command chair until her knuckles turned white. She had seen terrible things during her military career, but this calculated extermination of an entire peaceful species ignited something primal in her core. "Show me their fleet composition and any weaknesses in their formation." The tactical display updated, showing the Krethiks' vessels in detail. Each hive ship was enormous, easily 3 times the size of human dreadnoughts. Their hulls appeared organic, with sections that pulsed like living tissue. Weapons ports dotted their surfaces like lesions, and smaller fighter craft swarmed around them like insects. Around a hive dot analysis shows their ships are biological constructs, reported Ensign Yuki Tanaka from the science station. They grow their vessels rather than building them. The hulls are incredibly resilient to energy weapons because they can regenerate damage. However, there is a critical weakness. The biological nature means they are vulnerable to rapid temperature changes and kinetic impacts that cause massive trauma faster than they can heal. Chun absorbed this information, her tactical mind already formulating strategies. What about their tactics? They rely on overwhelming force and adaptive biological weapons. Tanaka continued. They swarm targets with smaller craft, while the hive ships bombard from range. Their doctrine assumes enemies will break under the assault. They have never encountered a species that fights back effectively after the initial attack, because they only attack peaceful species, Chun said, her voice hard as steel. They are bullies who have never been punched in the face. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Commander Chun. What we see before us is an atrocity. The Krethiks believe that peaceful people are easy prey. They believe that kindness is weakness. Today, we teach them the difference between being peaceful and being defenseless." The human strategy unfolds, Chun's tactical display showed her fleet's 20 ships against 43 Krethiks hive ships. On paper, it looked like suicide. But Chun had not survived 2 decades of combat by playing fair. She had survived by understanding that humans fought differently than every other species in the galaxy. "Fleet Order Alpha 7, she commanded. "Weapons free. Execute Deathworld Protocol." Throughout the fleet, human crews responded with practiced efficiency. The Deathworld Protocol was something uniquely human, a combat doctrine built on the understanding that humans could survive and fight in conditions that would kill most other species. It meant pushing ships, weapons, and crew to limits that seemed reckless to other civilizations, but were perfectly natural to children of Earth. The Retribution and her sister ships accelerated at forces that would have crushed the organic hulls of Krethiks' vessels. Human ships were built to withstand the crushing gravity of Earth, reinforced with metals forged in conditions most species considered impossible. The crews, strapped into acceleration couches, endured G-forces that would have liquefied Velner bodies or shattered Krethiks' carapaces. "They are detecting us," Webb reported. "The Krethiks' fleet is reforming to face our approach. They are launching fighter swarms. Count is over 2,000 small craft. Good," Sean said calmly. "Let them come to us. All ships, activate kinetic barriers and prepare cluster munitions. The moment they commit to the attack, execute dispersal pattern Gamma. The Krethiks fighters streamed toward the human fleet like a living wave. They had destroyed countless peaceful vessels with these same tactics, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers. But as they closed to weapons range, the human ships suddenly scattered in a 3-dimensional dispersal pattern that no organic hive mind had anticipated. Now, Chun commanded from every human vessel, thousands of kinetic cluster munitions fired simultaneously. These were not the energy weapons most species used, which the Kruthik's biological hulls could absorb and heal from. These were solid projectiles, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, each packed with explosive charges designed to fragment on impact. The Kruthik's fighter swarm flew directly into a wall of metal traveling at velocities that turned simple mass into devastating weapons. The kinetic impacts tore through biological armor that had evolved to resist energy beams. Hundreds of fighters disintegrated instantly. The explosive charges detonated inside the swarm, sending shrapnel through densely packed formations. Within seconds, over 60% of the fighter swarm had been obliterated. On the bridge of the lead Kruthik's hive ship, the swarm coordinator experienced something it had never felt before: fear. The organic intelligence that guided the Kruthik's collective had destroyed 17 civilizations. It had learned to read the patterns of prey, to anticipate their defensive formations, to overwhelm their resistance. But these new ships fought with a ferocity and tactical sophistication that broke every pattern in the coordinator's memory. The hive ships respond asterisk. The massive Kruthik's hive ships began firing their main weapons: organic plasma cannons that launched globules of superheated biological material capable of melting through most ship hulls. But the human vessels moved with impossible agility, their crews enduring acceleration patterns that seemed suicidal to the coordinator's understanding. "Commander, we are being targeted by multiple hive ships," Webb reported. Energy buildup suggests coordinated firing pattern. All ships, evasive pattern Delta 4, Shun ordered. Prepare cryothermal torpedoes. Target their largest vessels, the human. Fleet broke formation again, each ship moving independently in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated chaos. The Kruthik's plasma volleys streaked through empty space where human ships had been moments before. Before the hive ships could adjust their aim, the human counterattack arrived asterisk. Cryothermal torpedoes were another uniquely human weapon, born from Earth's extreme environments. Each torpedo contained a core of supercooled liquid kept stable by magnetic containment. On impact, the containment failed, releasing temperatures that could flash freeze biological matter in microseconds, followed immediately by a thermal charge that caused catastrophic expansion and fracturing. The torpedoes slammed into the hulls of 6 Kruthik's hive ships. The biological armor that could regenerate from energy weapon damage had no defense against the rapid temperature shock. Massive sections of hull froze solid, then shattered as the thermal charges detonated. The hive ships, which had seemed invincible, began breaking apart like diseased tissue. Impossible. The swarm coordinator broadcast to its fleet: "These weapons, these tactics, they are wrong. No peaceful species fights this way." But that was the Kruthik's fatal mistake. Humans were not a peaceful species. They were a species capable of peace, which was entirely different. Humanity had not evolved in the gentle paradise that bred the Velner's pacifism. Earth had forged humans in fire, radiation, crushing gravity, an endless competition with predators that had weapons built into their bodies. Humans had learned to craft weapons because they had to, and they had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war because survival demanded it. The battle intensifies. Chun Shung watched her tactical display with cold satisfaction as 6 hive ships died. But she knew the battle was far from over. The remaining Kruthik's vessels were adapting, pulling back into tighter defensive formations. They were learning, which meant she needed to escalate. Lieutenant Webb, prepare the impulse generators. Science team, I need those hive ships' biological frequencies now. Ensign Tanaka worked frantically at her station. Commander, the Kruthik's use bioelectric signals to coordinate their fleet movements. It is similar to neural networks. If we can disrupt those signals with a properly tuned electromagnetic pulse, We could cause massive coordination failures. Chun smiled grimly. Give me the frequency. All ships, prepare for synchronized EMP burst on my mark. Maximum power, full spectrum, centered on the frequency that Ensign Tanaka is uploading to your systems now. The human fleet maneuvered into position, forming a spherical pattern around the Krethix formation. Energy built up in the specialized generators. Systems designed by human engineers who understood that sometimes the best weapon against organic systems was to simply scramble their signals. Mark. Chun commanded. 20 human ships fired simultaneously, releasing coordinated electromagnetic pulses that washed over the Krethix fleet. The bioelectric signals that the Hive ships used to coordinate their movements suddenly went haywire. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation began drifting, colliding with each other, firing weapons at random as their organic guidance systems failed to distinguish friend from foe. Now we press the advantage, Chun said. All ships, target the disabled vessels. Railguns, maximum penetration rounds. Let us show them what kinetic warfare really means. The human railguns fired, launching solid projectiles at speeds that turned them into armor-piercing lances of destruction. Unlike energy weapons that the Krethix could adapt to, there was no defense against simple mass, traveling at relativistic velocities. The projectiles punched through Hive ship hulls, the kinetic energy transferring into the biological structures and causing catastrophic internal damage. Ground forces, deploy while the space battle raged. Chun had not forgotten the Velner colonists still trapped on the planets below. Rescue shuttles, heavily armored and escorted by fighter craft, burned through the atmosphere toward population centers where Velner survivors had barricaded themselves against Krethix harvester drones. Major Carlos Ramirez led the ground assault team, his powered armor clanking as he and his squad touched down in the ruins of a Velner city. Around them, buildings lay shattered, and the air stank of burning biological matter. Harvester drones, spider-like machines of organic metal, turned toward the new arrivals. Contact, Ramirez called out. Engaging hostiles. Human weapons fire tore through the harvester drones. These were not the precise energy weapons favored by most species. These were explosives, fletchet rounds, and chemical accelerants, weapons born from centuries of human warfare. The drones, designed to terrify and overwhelm peaceful civilians, found themselves facing soldiers who had trained in conditions that made this battlefield look gentle. Behind a collapsed structure, a group of Velner survivors huddled together, their silver fur matted with dust and blood. An elderly Velner named Corin, the former station master, looked up with wide eyes as armored figures approached. For a moment, he thought the Krethix had sensed new horrors. Then Ramirez removed his helmet, revealing a scarred human face. "We are from Earth," he said simply. "We came to help." "Can you walk?" Corin's forearms trembled. "You came. You actually came. The Council said no one would help us. Earth does not abandon friends," Ramirez replied. "Now let us get you to safety. More survivors are gathering at evacuation points. We have medical teams standing by. The final strike in orbit, the battle reached its climax." The Krethix had lost 22 Hive ships, nearly half their fleet, and the survivors were attempting to retreat. But Chun had no intention of letting them escape to prey on another peaceful species. All ships, pursue and engage. These creatures have destroyed 17 civilizations. Today, we ensure they never destroy an 18th. She opened a broadband communication channel. "Attention Krethix Fleet. This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force. You came to the Kepler system expecting easy prey. You found Deathworlders instead. Surrender now or be destroyed." The swarm coordinator, its hive ship damaged and leaking atmosphere, faced a decision it had never contemplated before. It had always been the predator, never the prey. The concept of surrender was foreign to its biology, but survival was not. "We withdraw," it transmitted. "This species is not prey. This species is predator." "No," Chun said coldly. "You do not get to leave and attack someone else. You do not get to run because you finally met someone who could fight back. This ends here." The human fleet opened fire with every weapon system simultaneously. The remaining Krethix hive ships, already damaged and disorganized, had no chance. Kinetic rounds, cryothermal torpedoes, and focused particle beams overwhelmed their defenses. One by one, the massive vessels broke apart, their biological systems failing catastrophically. The swarm coordinator's final thought, as its ship disintegrated around it, was a simple realization transmitted across space. "We hunted sheep and found wolves. This was always how we would end." The aftermath 3 days after the battle. Commander Chun stood in the reconstructed central plaza of the Velner capital city. Around her, rescue operations continued as human medical teams treated wounded Velner and engineers, helped rebuild critical infrastructure. The Velner had lost much, nearly 30% of their population, but they had survived. Korin approached, his silver fur now clean and groomed, though his large eyes still held the shadows of trauma. "Commander Chun, on behalf of all Velner, I must thank you. Without Earth's intervention, we would have been extinct within days." Chun nodded solemnly. "I only wish we had arrived sooner. Too many of your people died before we could help. You came when no one else would," Korin said. "The Galactic Council is still debating whether to authorize a response." He looked up at the human warships in orbit. "They call you Deathworlders. I understand now what that means. You come from a world that made you strong. It taught you to fight. But you chose to use that strength to protect the weak rather than prey on them. That is what makes us human," Chun replied. "We know what it means to survive against impossible odds. We will not stand by and watch others be exterminated by bullies." She looked around at the reconstruction efforts. "Your people will rebuild, and Earth will help. We are establishing a defense station in this system." The Krethix learned their lesson, but there are other predators in the galaxy. As Chun returned to orbit, she received a priority message from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Morrison's hologram appeared, his expression unreadable. "Commander Chun, your actions in the Kepler system have caused quite a stir. The Galactic Council is debating sanctions against Earth for unauthorized military intervention." Chun raised an eyebrow. "And what is your response, Admiral?" Morrison allowed himself a rare smile. "I told them that humans do not ask permission to do the right thing. Your fleet saved an entire species from extinction. If the Council has a problem with that, they can file a formal complaint." He leaned forward. "Good work, Commander. You showed the galaxy what humanity stands for. Now every peaceful species out there knows they have allies. And every predator knows that attacking the defenseless has consequences. Asterisk." The transmission ended, and Chun looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were other peaceful species, other Velners who might face extinction from predators who believed kindness was weakness. But now they knew that Deathworlders would answer their calls. They knew that Earth stood between the predators and their prey. In the Velner capital, Korin stood with his people as they watched the human fleet prepare to depart. The massive warships, scarred from battle but triumphant, began moving towards slip-space transition points. One by one, they vanished into the swirling corridors of faster-than-light travel, leaving behind a grateful species and a clear message to the galaxy. The age of predators preying on the peaceful was over. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they would answer every call for help with ruthless precision. The Krethix had learned this lesson at the cost of their entire fleet. Other predators would learn it too, or they would share the Krethix's fate on Earth. In the halls of military command and civilian government, humanity began to understand its new role in galactic society. They were not conquerors. They were not missionaries seeking to impose their ways on others. They were protectors, guardians who had emerged from a death world with the strength to defend those who could not defend themselves. And across the galaxy, on peaceful worlds that had lived in fear of predators for generations, beings looked up at the stars and felt hope. Because now they knew that if the predators came, if the swarms descended, they would not face them alone. The Deathworlders would come. Earth would answer. And the predators would learn what humans had known for millions of years. That sometimes the only way to stop a predator is to be apex. Asterisk.